Hey everyone, welcome to episode 39 of the Friers podcast. This episode is with Andrew Crook, President of the National Federation of Fish Friers. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that sent me messages, thoughts, questions for this episode. I really appreciate it. Secondly, upon listening to this episode, I feel like I talk more than usual, which isn't a surprise for most. And upon reflection, I think it's because I really wanted to put people's points across, and I know they clearly mean a lot to you, so I just wanted to make sure that we both gave them a thorough examination. I suppose I probably get a little bit more passionate about anything fish and chips because I'm a stakeholder and I think it matters. Thirdly, and most importantly, I want to say a big thank you to Andrew Crook for taking part in this episode. I think it's important that we recognise that Andrew and other regional directors do give up their time to be away from their shop and families working on NFFF. They don't need a constant reminder of how well they do. They just need more members. They represent 100% of the industry and only 10% pay for it. If you join, you're not only donating money, you're paying to be part of a trade body that has your back. But even more importantly, you receive lots of member benefits. And as a small business, I know how important they can be. And you can get all of this for less than 50 pence a day. And for those of you that don't know who picks up the bills, then head over to worldofcerers.com. We've been updating our blogs and putting out transcripts of the podcasts, episode articles, and updating our recipes for fish cake mix, mushy peas, and so much more. Recently, we've added 2 new articles about Lauren Hiller from the MSC and Kate Nichols from UK Hospitality, and we'll be updating this section quite regularly. I just want to take this moment to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I hope you all manage to take a well-deserved break and do what you like to do best. I'm sending you lots of love from the Friers family to yours. I hope you enjoy this episode with Andrew Crook, and don't forget to follow the National Federation of Fish Friers on Facebook. Just look out for the NFFF. Enjoy. Andrew Crook, thank you for your time today.
Your pleasure.
We didn't realise, we said earlier, that this is essentially our second podcast anniversary. So you were the second podcastee, and this is our anniversary because it was a year ago today that we released it.
I can't believe how fast time flies, you know.
Yeah.
It's, I think we're all that busy and it just kind of gets away from you, doesn't it? So
It does. Everything just goes really fast.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad thing, I suppose, is it?
Well, I don't know. I'm looking forward to a couple of days off at Christmas, I can tell you. That's a definite.
So we're doing a bit of Q&A today, as you know. I sent over all the questions and we're just going to go over them in a conversational format. It's not going to be, it's not a Paxman drilling. But, shall we start with, let's see, right at the top. It's been a year since we last spoke, one-to-one. What's been happening this year? That's an easy one. Go on, you go for that.
Loads going on, attending a lot more meetings. I mean, one of the things we've been trying to do with the NFFF is improve engagement with members. So what I try to do is get more communication out of there. So I'm quite accessible, as people all know. They can get hold of me on Facebook, and I had one at 8:30 last night. I get them at 7 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And
yeah.
So we've been focusing on that. And I still think I was talking to Tim Barnes from Crispies, and I still think we've got a little bit more to do on that. The problem is, obviously, there's a lot of meetings that I attend, and it's not always that easy to get the purpose of the meeting out to the members and the outcomes of it. So that's something that we want to work on in the new year.
Yeah.
I've actually put Leslie Graves working alongside me and Robin on our media department.
She needs to work more, to be fair.
She does, but she'll mother Rob as well, so she's a great character. So we've just made a few changes there to try and get more communication with members. And
so one thing I've heard, and this is not on my notes, it's just now you're saying it, and it's probably how it's going to go, to be fair. But one thing I've heard recently is that people would like to see the same amount from the NFFF, but less from you.
Yeah.
And more from, not being, rude, but more from others.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you dealing with that to some degree? Because you are the forefront.
I just think it's kind of happened organically, but we've just changed the structure of the NFFF, so we've split the board up so that we've got a board member and a deputy, another board member deputising on each department. So John Penaluna's looking after membership, and he's in constant touch with Eileen in the office, and we've got David Miller with training, with Craig Buckley there, and I just think it's part of a transition. What I wanted to do, I said I'd probably do 5 years as president. It might be more, it might be less if people want me to go early. But what I want to do is have 2 years of really hammering it out and driving things forward, which I think I've been doing. And now it's time to still carry on pushing, but let other people fill in some of the meetings. Some of the meetings have to be me because I've got the relationships with the other cuisines, but start bringing people through. But I'm in this for the long term, and even once I step down as president, I'll still be around for advice. Obviously, you've got to let whoever takes over
do their thing.
It's their job, and they've got to make their mark. But I'm always there for advice, and I certainly won't abandon the industry because it's what I love. So
Of course. And I think from most points, I think where I'm getting at is more social media, really. You can't always be on demand. It's a personal tax that people probably don't see that's taxing on you personally. So that's where I'm coming from. It's more from the human side,
But I'm always happy to speak to other fish fryers, and quite often people just message me for a quick catch up or a natter. And last night it was somebody who's a former member that's got an issue, so I'm quite happy to help with that. And yesterday morning I had a loss adjuster on the phone from a shop that's had a fire, so you never know what's going to come across.
Sounds like lots of fun.
It's interesting, definitely.
So another part of that question was essentially, what has the NFFF done this year? What notable things can you think of? I'm sure there's plenty, but run us through a few.
Well, there's also, we've been involved with public health, and I think that's probably been the biggest issue this year. It's been a funny year with the B word. We'll try not to mention it too much, but
it's done now. We're nearly done anyway.
Well,
so
it's getting there. It's oven ready and nearly baked. But I think that's kind of dominated government and slowed a hell of a lot of things down. So things haven't been moving as quickly as maybe they ought to have done. But on the public health front, we've had a few results working with the British Takeaway Campaign. The Perfect Portion website that we produce, which it just helps satisfy a few answers. I know a member in Peterborough had the local health inspector turn up, and he had a printout of the website because it's been circulated to AHO. So it just goes to show that we're working as an industry to try and... I know it's a funny topic, is calorie control, and I know we're going on to public health issues later on, but...
No, we can jump onto that now, it's cool.
We need to... where the government's coming from, it's the future health bills that they can't afford. So it's definitely on the agenda. You've also got Dame Sally Davis, who's just about to leave, and you might have seen the report about stopping people snacking on tube trains and public transport. Underneath that, there was a headline, that was brushed underneath a little bit, but it keeps bobbing up again, which is about increasing VAT on high-fat, salt and sugar foods. And I think that's probably something we need to watch at.
I don't think so now. I don't think so. Look, I'm not being funny. The government we've got in now are not going to be looking at stuff like that. I think they've got other things to do, And that article that you mentioned actually about stopping snacking on public transport, just switch off the lifts.
Make them go upstairs.
I'll tell you what. Is it the one in Covent Garden?
Yeah.
You get caught in that one, mate.
That is true. That is true.
Well, I think. Look, the problem is telling people what to do doesn't actually make them do it. Yeah. So so I just think that with anything like public health and things like that, they just really need to use their brains really and just think, telling people to not eat a biscuit on a train or whatever it is they're eating, crisps, whatever, it's just stupid. It's just not going to work.
Well, that's never going to work. But and also, I know Boris's government's less into the nanny state, so I know I definitely know that's a fact. But I do think going forward, there's always going to be this need to just look at portions have got bigger, and I do think we need to watch it. But you've just got to give that choice to the consumer, not force it upon them. But I think the government probably needs to do some sort of educational piece if they do want to save money on the NHS. And I think,
and it probably goes back to when we were at school. There was food technology, there was domestic science, there was all these things, and so I think maybe just bring it back there. Start there, because if the next generation are learning about food from a younger age, I think they can try all these systems and schemes, but it generally all starts at school. So why not? And if they understand about eating food, they'll probably eat less crap as well.
But there's a local Facebook group where I live in Chorley, and every single post it says the food's great, portions are huge, and that's something that people do demand it, and it's something as an industry you've got to give them that choice if they want a lot. But we have to make sure what we're selling is at the right price, and we're not just trying to buy custom with volume, because
that's the temptation for the fish and chip industry has always been there for many reasons, Well, and I guess maybe lots of takeaways, but if you look at over the last 100 years, it's gone from being a very cheap product, ingredients products. Potatoes were cheap, fish were cheap, so you can see how there was a temptation to give a bit more. It's primarily been a cash business. Let's not hide from that. So you could hide a bit here, hide a bit there. There was lots of reasons why. Whereas now all the legislation, everything's catching up with the fish and chip industry, like every other business, and I think that I think there is going to be a transitional phase. It's not going to be great for people, but I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. It's even when it comes down to waste, we need to make sure we limit the amount of waste that we produce, because again, that's going to be expensive to get rid of. And I do think the industry needs to start shaping itself a little bit to be ready for the future, and that's something that we're playing a part in. A lot of the meetings we attend, we have packaging companies, we have people involved with the waste side of things and recycling, and it's definitely the way things are heading. And hopefully the NFFF will be able to provide the information out there for members.
What are your so if we stick on public health for a moment, what are your thoughts on like Owen's law and Natasha's law? Have you read into that much?
Yeah, is it the pre-pack for direct sale?
Yeah.
We're still waiting for clarification on what we need to do, because things like tartar sauce and mushy peas may come into it, and it's.
So I think with Owen's law, that's what they want. They want everything to be, listed just like Natasha's law in a retail sense, isn't it? And I think that it can probably become a bit too much. How do you see yourself advising members there?
Well, I think we'll probably try and get some sense at a governmental level. Yeah. So obviously tartar sauce, things like that, you could have labels produced, but it's when you try and be creative using up ingredients, and you've then got to print a label to put on the product to sell it. I think the allergen laws in 2013 worked quite well. I think industry looked after it well and presented it to the public, and I do think most people have a matrix in the shop, don't they? So they've got the information available. And if I had an allergy, I'd make sure that I ask the question. It's as long as the information's there.
Too, I don't think you can legislate for the minority by putting it on the majority. Yeah. I think that's where you've got to be really careful.
I think if my parents were still in business now and still operating a shop, they'd really struggle.
They probably
with
would.
Everything.
Yeah. But I wonder if that'll be the case moving forward. So, like with you, for example, you're more computer literate. I don't think that would be the case with you in 30 years' time. You may personally want to not be working in the shop, but I think in terms of computers and all that, you'd be fairly literate.
Hopefully, you've got to keep up with it.
Well, you do, but you're a techie person. But I do think this is where everything's going. So, commodity prices been a tricky couple of years for commodities. Do you see? What are you hearing? You're at the top of the tree with the organisation. What are potato men saying? What are farmers saying? What are the fish guys saying?
Well, with potatoes, I think obviously it's very weather dependent. But what I keep hearing is that farmers need to earn a fair price. Farmers would rather have stability rather than fluctuating prices like we've got. And I think that's where it seems to be heading. They're not dropping down to the £4 or £5 a bag. They're holding a little bit more. So I do think we'll still see peaks and troughs. You get bad weather. I think this year was a good growing season till right at the end, and we got the rain. Last year obviously was bad. So
it's weird because I was flying out from England that week, and it was just the week that I think I saw a post from Mitchell's Potatoes that they'd shared that a farmer of theirs had shared to them. And it was the fields were logged, and a load of comments on Facebook were like, "Oh, here we go again, another excuse. 1 minute it's too hot, 1 minute it's too wet." And I was like, "Yes, that's what affects potatoes: too much heat and too much wet. They're the two worst things." And but I was flying out of East Midlands Airport, and you were looking down, and all the fields were just waterlogged. So it's not a conspiracy theory.
It's not fabricated. They have had an issue, and it's hopefully there's enough potatoes in store of good quality that'll see us through. But every year we seem to hit something. I can understand why shops feel like that. But
I get that too. It's been a few years of just constant. Wheat's got up, flour's got up. Whether it's potatoes, something. It's always something lately. It's just like
pork.
And now with pork, obviously. And I was talking to my local butcher the other day, and I says, how's pork prices? And he goes, oh, good, thanks. And I was like, thanks. And he was just chatting about it. He goes, the global stuff doesn't really hit us on a local level. He goes, because we're not mopping up 20, 30, 50 ton, because we just buy what we need for our butchers. Yeah. So I think it is a big problem on the bigger scale, but on the local scale, it's not a problem. Yeah. So I think if you was buying, and I'm not advocating people do, but if you was buying a local sausage that's made by your local butcher, which isn't a frying sausage anyway, but if you was buying that sausage, you would be okay. But I think if you're buying from the mass producers like our industry does, then that's where the problem is. Yeah. And someone like Blakeman's must be going for a serious amount of pork. Like, they're huge companies. They're mopping up some serious amount of pork.
Yeah, it's got to be a big worry for them. But at the end of the day, as shop owners, we've got to move the prices up. It can't be helped. It's just one of those things.
I'm being funny. Like, come on, mate. Like, you're laughing because you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
like,
it's a sausage.
It's a sausage. Like if it went up 2p or 3p, if it went up 5p, your margin on a sausage is pretty ridiculous. Like,
I mean, talking in general.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Sausages are somewhere where you make a little bit of money, whereas other products you probably don't make quite as much.
When you compound it against everything else.
Yeah.
But I just think that sooner or later, people just have to sit down and look at their margins. And I think that's the key thing here. It's like, they need to sit down, look at their margins and say, what am I making here? Yeah. And just lift or tweak where it is needed. But I think the key thing for me, the biggest thing, is just don't lose sight that fish and chips is the original value for money meal. If you look at like Chinese food or Indian food, it's wet. There's a lot of sauces. You can hide stuff in that. Whereas with fish and chips, there's nowhere to hide, is there?
No, it's straightforward. I do think we're seeing a bit of a resurgence as well. I think people, they're going back to the local fish and chip shop. Obviously, the trade's always been there, but I think people are getting a little bit. They like honest food where they know the ingredients, they know it's a local business, and I think that is winning people over again. I've certainly got busier this year, but as I say, I think there's place in the market for all, and obviously with the work we do, we work with the British Takeaway campaign. We've got the other cuisines there, and I used to think, well, a bit of competition, but nowadays people eat out more, so one day a week they'll have Indian, one day a week they'll have fish and chips, and
there's plenty of business for everyone.
Yeah.
When you talk to those guys or girls, what's their thoughts on the industry? Like on their side, do they see like a bit of a hammering in some places, increased costs and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, I think they're all having the same issues. I've heard VAT mentioned quite a lot. I went to the Bangladeshi Curry Awards, and on the stage they mentioned VAT. Business rates are affecting them. Most of them have got restaurants as well. I think increased costs. Obviously, if they're using pork, chicken probably not as much, but there's a lot of bad press around chicken and factory farms. So, but I do think everyone's under pressure. I think they've got the same problems recruiting staff. I think we're all the same.
Do you think consumers care? Like, when we say, for example, you said chicken's got bad press, or let's say fish, declining stocks, or I'm just talking about. I'm not saying these are true. I'm just saying it's what's in the news. Yeah. All these news items. Do you think consumers care? Do you think they read it and say, "I'm not going to eat chicken from the curry house because the way it was reared"? Or the Nando's story a few months ago. I bet you when that story went out about Nando's, not one person stopped going, and I bet you more people went. Yeah.
I think you're probably right. I think a lot of people probably don't care. They just go on price, and that's what they want to eat. But you've got to push back on it, because if you don't push back on it and you don't have the facts there, you're leaving yourself wide open. Yeah. Look at what's happened with plastics. And that came out of nowhere and nobody was ready for it.
But I do think. But see, here's the mistake with plastics. I think to some degree nothing's changed. I don't care what anybody says to me. From that film coming out, that Blue Planet, nothing has changed. If anything, we've had a load of pandering, and I really think because we've had a weak government, a load of people have just pandered to it. And I think no one's done any viable change that I can see that is really sensible. You've got some people that moved over to paper straws. They're crap. I'm sorry. It's the only thing that really gets on my nerves really badly. Like, and it's like drinking a drink through toilet roll. Just don't give me one. Just don't give me one. But I think that the whole plastic movement, plastic does have its use. But when you consider that, I think 8 out of 10 rivers that are polluted are all in Asia because they just literally treat it like a skip yard and reverse into a river. That, you know, none of that is happening in the UK. And I think on the whole, the majority of people, especially in the UK, are very, very responsible. Yeah. But again, we get penalised as a wealthy country, let's say, because we do have hot food takeaways and etc. So, but I just think that why should we be penalised? And I don't think we should be allowed to export all our rubbish to other countries either. I think we should be dealing with it in this country.
I was going to say, some of that plastic that's going into rivers could be coming from the UK. But
granted, and there was a story a few years ago where I think one country, it might have been sending it to Italy, and the Italians were just dumping it, you know, because it was mafia owned or whatever. So the story says, don't want to get shot. Like, you know, but do you know what I mean? Like,
it's been nice knowing you still.
But I just think that we pander to these stories, and you know, and the same with the palm oil. When that all kicked off with Iceland, you know, it was baseless. You know, they went to non-sustainable fields. You know, don't get me wrong, there was problems. You know, and now they're not as much as what they used to be. But you know, no one focuses on the bigger problem. If you get rid of palm oil, which is what I think they say, to get rid of palm oil, you need to increase the quantity of all the others by 5.
Yeah.
You know, and I might be understating it there, because I think it's 8, but I want to say, I'm just going to play it safe and say 5. Like, you know, so, you know, sunflower oil can't do that. There's not enough land. Like, there's just not enough. Like, so, and if you think that deforestation's bad, what about when they clear a field that had rapeseed in it? There was no animals there.
But if you look at Watch Dragon's Den, you'll see Deborah Meaden going on about, well, it's palm oil free, you know. We've got to get the message out, and there's a lot of fake news out there, and I think that's the biggest issue we've got in society, to be honest. The amount of nonsense that's put in front of us on social media now.
And everyone believes it.
Yeah.
And it's got to be true, because it was on Facebook.
I've just seen a guy this morning who said there's planes spraying chemicals all over to control us.
That's been a myth since the 70s, hasn't it? Yeah.
Well, I said it's water ballast, you know, and it's like, but people just absorb it, and if it's on Facebook, they treat it as true, and it's...
Yeah, I think it's almost like people think, well, not like I believe the BBC more, but they almost think Facebook is the BBC. Yeah. You know, but I think even the BBC get it wrong, you know, telling us to go vegan and telling us to do this, and meat's going to end the world. Yeah. Done all right so far. Done all right so far.
I'm not giving up mistakes, that's for sure.
So there's a lot about packaging, actually. I must have had like 4 or 5 questions. So one person said one of the biggest issues they see is that with us all moving over to, like, you know, delivery service with like Just Eat and so on, most of us are quite scared, he says, about finding the right packaging. And he says, you know, what would you say is the right packaging? He actually goes on to say, what's the NFFF doing about this? Why don't they use their size stroke power to get new packaging company on board to develop something purely for delivery service? Okay, so that's that bit. We'll sort of go on to the next bit on that. But what's your thoughts there?
Well, when I first got involved with the British Takeaway campaign, the then managing director of the UK, Graham Corfield, was at the meeting, and I said to him, what you should be doing is putting an X fund, an X prize together for universities to develop the perfect fish and chip delivery system. If they come up with it, you've got the rights to it, your quids in. If they don't, we've got a lot of publicity. I do think it's an issue, and you've got to accept that products, when you're taking people's home, they're probably not going to be as good as when they come out of the fryer. I think the gas boxes, the bio boxes, even though I don't advocate them for the environment, they are good for quality. I think that does help. It was Reece Ed from Friers magazine that said to me, because they were doing delivery from their shop, and he stopped doing it. He said, when people go home and take the food home and they stand talking to the neighbour for 10 minutes on the driveway and then go in and open it up and it's not right, they think, well, I know why that is. I've been outside, I've been having a chat, I've not rushed in.
I should have come straight in, yeah.
As soon as you take it to the door, they want it as crisp as it comes out of the fryer, and that's one of the hurdles we've got to get over. But also, I think we're probably our own worst critics. I think we scrutinise our food probably more than the public do, so there is a little bit of give and take as well.
I think one of the things, like back in the day when people were using wrapping paper, you know, I've watched some films where they're eating fish and chips. There was one film, I can't remember, it was like a film about the IRA, like they were eating fish and chips, and you could tell it was soggy, but that was the way fish and chips was meant to be eaten back then. Yeah. And it's actually, as our flavour palettes have changed, we like texture, we want it to be nice and crisp, we want the fish to be steamed perfectly inside, we want the chips to be crisp and fluffy. Yeah. And there's no packaging that really allows for that yet, you know. I think, obviously, like you said, bagasse is great, because I think that the good thing with that is that it absorbs the moisture and then gets a little wobble to it, but it absorbs the moisture. But then also corrugated's good. I think the only problem with corrugated is that it's flat instead of tall, you know, which I like, you know, I prefer that. But one question I've got is, why do so many fish and chip shops still use paper?
I think price and probably a lot of consumers do like chips in paper.
Yeah. And my wife does.
So maybe not so much fish. I think fish doesn't travel as well and it gets damaged. But I think a bag of chips is a bag of chips. You know, and it's like people do like that.
Still say a bag of chips, yeah.
But it might come down to packaging and having, obviously spending money on packaging, but the volume of packaging you're having to buy into your shop, and it's the big hurdle with serving in paper is getting that portion control right. I know people used to use a plate and put things.
I think also training. I'm not being funny. Wrapping a bag of chips. There's training there. Like imagine saying to people, you don't have to train people how to wrap anymore. I think that's better than what you're saying to some degree. Like that, you're saving money on the training aspect.
Well, I think with packaging as well, the boxes are quicker to serve people. I find so.
There's a bit of time making them, obviously.
Well, the corrugated ones you've got to build them up, but it's good punishment for the staff, and it gives them, if you've got a lull, it's something for them to do. I'll put it that way. They might be listening.
So with bio boxes, someone says it's clear that they're not as bio as what they're made out to be. What's then NFFF doing to correct that?
Well, there's not that we can just educate people, but I've put quite a lot out on social media about that. But people are still moving on to bio boxes, which is fine because they're good for quality.
Granted.
But I'm seeing shops going on Facebook publicising their environmental credentials to trying to get a commercial advantage.
If they're being told that by their supplier, so that's where it comes from. So is it not easier just to say to the supplier, can you correct this please, so we can just move on?
We've done that. We had Martin Kirsch from the Food Packaging Association present to the associate members meeting, but I think they were not intentionally by our distributors, but I think the people that supply them advertising with bio boxes, biodegradable, but they're actually a compostable plastic, so it's a bioplastic that's made. So that they're definitely not as degradable as people assume.
I think Mike Pilly's still got one in his garden in the ground that still hasn't composted at all.
Yeah, I know. You need certain conditions, and even a lot of composting facilities or digesters can't handle them as well. So that they're certainly not the answer for the environment.
I didn't know that.
And I know you do. And
I didn't know that bit. No, I didn't know that bit. No.
All right, but it's getting.
I thought that if they went to those facilities, they would be okay.
They've got quite a long cycle, so it's usually too long for the actual cycle of the digester.
Whereas with corrugated, let's say, I know you can't recycle because the food's been on it, moisture, whatever. And even our local council said the other day we won't take wet board anymore. So if they're not going to take wet board, they're not going to take oily board. Yeah. So, but if you to just cut it up, put it in the normal bin, it's gone. Yeah. It came from recycled sources anyway, and it's going to go mushy with the normal waste. Yeah. You know, so I think that's one option. The other option, if it's paper, that's obviously going straight in the bin as well. But then, one of the other things, I don't know if you saw it recently, there was a news article that said that polystyrene, not only is it, there's a few things about polystyrene. I'm not a big fan of polystyrene, but this is like to be devil's advocate. But if you leave it out in the sunlight, it breaks down on its own. Yeah, and it's true, because if you ever put polystyrene in the microwave, it bubbles up, doesn't it? And it just dissolves. They were saying that although it's not the best quality, you can actually reuse it, providing it gets picked up and taken to a facility, it just gets washed, it gets flaked, and they can reuse it and press it into something else. But none of this was said back then. And I think now it's like, 1 minute, we've jumped out the pan into the fire, and we're no better off. And this is what I get round to with the whole packaging thing, is that we're no better off because the majority were with poly and paper, and now moved to probably still paper but something else, and we're still no better off, are we?
I totally agree. I mean, it was said at the time because Martin Kirsch was trying to drum it out, but the media weren't interested because people had visions of the
Utopia,
whales. Well, no, it was Blue Planet that it just captured everybody, and it caught everybody off guard. Plastic's definitely got a use. People won't buy things unless they won't buy a sandwich unless they can see the filling. You know, there's definitely a use for it. It's more about making sure it gets to the right place. There's absolutely no guidance out there, and we've done our best because we get information from Martin, the Food Packaging Association, and we've tried to get that information out to members. But even then, people are resisting it, or they're saying the customers are demanding it anyway, just like the palm oil. And we've got to keep pushing back because I think we've got a duty to do what's right for the environment rather than what's just right for our business. Yeah. Because people tell us that that's right.
Well, it needs to be the best for both. Yeah, because they both go hand in hand, whatever you say. And if it's not good for both, then what's the point? You know?
There's new technologies coming along as well. I know Just Eat have been investing in some boxes that'll break down in a set amount of time, but it's more designed for Chinese industry because of the volume that they use. there'll be something that comes along that solves the problem in the future, but we're not quite there yet.
One of the downsides, we'll probably touch on this later on with the aggregators like Just Eat. The only downside with them doing any form of packaging, in my view, is the fact that it has their name all over it. So it's all right them discounting corrugated boxes because it says Just Eat on it, but it doesn't look right in my view.
I agree with that. But I mean, these are Satco ones, so they're transparent, so they might stamp it. It might be embossed, I suppose.
Well, they've got the volume, haven't they? So they can do. So what are your thoughts on the skill shortages? That's something that, I don't even know if it's skill shortages in our industry, but what I see in our industry is staff shortages. Like, it's a balance. People. I don't think they've even got to the skill part yet. I think it's just the fact that they haven't got the footfall of people.
Well, we're working on all sorts of different initiatives. Obviously, we've been involved with apprenticeships and trying to get those off the ground for quite a few years with Seafish, and we have got something that's running now. We've got T levels, which is coming in, I think 2021, maybe 2022. Depends what's going on again. Brexit. That's same as an A level, but vocational, so working in industry. So hopefully, we might get young people coming into fish and chips that they might not stay in fish and chips for the rest of their life, but they might go out the other end into wider hospitality, but create a chimney effect. So we're sucking more people coming into the bottom end, and we get them for a few years. And I think that's we do provide a good service, training people up, even if they don't stay in catering.
Fish and chip shop. Well, they say that hospitality is people's first job into the working world. I'd argue that fish and chips is well before that as well, because everyone's got a local chip shop. Whereas that you mostly go first. I'll go to the chip shop. But I don't see it in our industry as a skill shortage. I see it as a people shortage. And I tell you what, one of the reasons I think, my niece recently, she's 16, goes and gets a job at McDonald's, $6.50 an hour, like that. No messing around. And I think it's a money problem in our industry. And I think that we don't want to pay more. I see the comments on Facebook a lot. Oh, well, they might as well get paid more than me. They get paid more than me. And I'm like, this is what it's going to be like. If you want people, you pay. And I think that's what's going to make, whatever we say, all these schemes that you mentioned are going to make the industry look more professional, there's no doubt, and be more professional. But if they're not getting paid, no one's going to come.
It does come down to money. We had this conversation with myself and Craig Buckley when he was going on the radio with Boris Johnson, and we were talking about what the drive is, and ultimately it does come down to money. We've got to be able to pay people to work these unsociable hours, to work the weekends, to work the bank holidays. People. I know myself. When I was in my 20s, my friends going away for weekends in Dublin, and I miss it. And over Christmas this year, I've got friends get a gathering on the 28th, I think it is, and I can't make that because I've got to work. That's the sacrifice you make working in catering and the service industry. And I think as an employee, you want to be paid for that. As an employer, you get the passion, don't you? And it's your business, and you take the rough with the smooth. It doesn't make it any easier. No.
It's just going to make it hard, obviously. We're not saying it's easy. It's going to be harder to balance the books. It's going to be tighter margins. But it might be that if you can get someone in an early age and they're getting a very good wage, it might mean that they stay for longer. It might mean that they just stay, for a start, rather than giving you 2 weeks work and saying stuff this. If they stay and they learn, you spend less on training. You can take a day off because those people are more... or better, obviously, more trained,
Well, I do think that people with the lowest staff turnover are the ones that invest them. So it's not just financial; it's investing in training, and they feel progression.
It's a constant thing. It's not. I think money, as important as it is one of the many things. But if you link that with what you're saying, which is all those extra levels, the T levels, and makes the job more respectable, something to learn, makes it more of a career. You bundle all that together, then the money helps, doesn't it? And I think obviously in the political climate we've had at the moment, everyone's talking about more wages, and I think that we can't look away from that. I think because if you've got people working for you doing 48 hours a week and they can't afford to live, or they've got to have a second job as well, like you're going to say, well, why would I work there? I could go to McDonald's, I could go to Tesco, and I think that's the other thing. These big companies will just mop up the labour force. I mean, they will just mop it up. So. The lady I know that's got 17 McDonald's now, she said, not only do they pay really well, but they can't find enough people. So that tells you that if they're struggling, what's going to happen to our industry?
It's so difficult, and I find it myself in my own shop. The next generation, a reasonably affluent village, and their kids, the parents want them to have a job, but they've also got a bit of money in their pocket, so they'll work. But then when it comes to
Christmas, they're going away for Christmas. And,
and just like that, like with the parents with their employer would ring up the employer or log a holiday form, whereas they'll just say to the kids, "Oh, we're going on holiday." That's it. Whereas and the only way to make kids work is to not give them money. Who's been the longest serving member?
Well,
did you check this one out?
We tried. So that's the thing. Unfortunately, in the wisdom, there's Rolodex cards down in the basement of this building, which it'd be a mammoth job, and we've got all the history there, which we'll look through. But on the computer system, when it was originally set up 20 years ago, they didn't put the date people joined. We do record it now.
Yeah,
it's something that because information you can't go back. We've got some really long-standing members. There's Dorothy Scholes in Manchester, Arnold Scholes, the past president, Arthur Parrington, Dennis Jevons, Dennis Tate. There's some quite elderly statesmen of the industry.
It's a 160-year-old organisation, so it's fair to say that some people are dead.
Yeah,
because it's not like an 80-year-old organisation or a 70-year-old one.
Well, the organisation's 106 years, so we didn't
All
start
right.
The 160s to the fish and chips.
Yeah. So, with ever-increasing prices of cod, I hear the best alternatives to cod are ling and coley. From a price texture point of view to customers, I currently sell cod, haddock, plaice and lemon sole. Between ling and coley, which would you do?
It's a while since I've tried ling, which was when I was in Whitby, but coley I had when I was in Norway, and it was a reasonable fish.
I like coley.
Yeah. But what I'd say is have cod and haddock on your menu, but if you want to hit a price point, try another species.
Yeah.
I know people that are using pollock and it's working very well. Lunchtimes especially.
You get frozen at sea pollock now.
Yeah. So there's some alternatives, but I'd always keep the premium stuff there. And
of course.
Just have an alternative and say, why don't you try this? 9 times out of 10, people will want cod or haddock, depending what the normal fish is.
But at least they're given a choice.
Well, that's it, and then that's all you can do. And you don't want to put people off just because they've not got the money to afford. Introduce them to fish and chips at a cheaper price point.
If I remember right, when I got ling a while back, the bones went all the way to the top. If I'm right.
I've never cut it, so I've never used it.
It was an annoying fish to cut, if I remember. But maybe you can get it with fillets now anyway. So
somebody will do it for you.
Yeah, well, exactly. There's someone out there.
I think when I had that, we took it to Fusco's in Whitby. So we went to the fishmongers across, and then they cooked it. And I was still a bit green from the fishing trip. So
of course you were.
I missed that bit.
You're pretty green from every trip. So does the Federation help with HMRC investigations, and in what way?
Yeah, well, we've got cover, which every member's covered with IRAG. The only disclaimer is if it's obvious that there's some sort of illegal activity going on, that you're not covered by that policy.
Okay.
In which case, we do represent people.
So you're basically covered if they vet you and they see that you're being legit.
Yeah.
If you're not being legit, for whatever reason, if they have any whiff of that, you won't.
But if it's a mistake, they'll try and help.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
If not, we've not had it recently. I had a non-member who joined who tried to get help who was under an investigation, but again, it was probably a damage limitation exercise rather than anything. We have had in the past, and this is before my time, sat in investigations with HMRC and a member. So just try and help get to the bottom of what the issue is, or try and reduce the impact on the member. And we have got, when the HMRC use certain figures to work out the wastage on potatoes, which we provide them with. So we've got that sort of information that we can go back to try and help a member out and get them out of the mess.
With the industry, the whole world going over to like electronic payments.
Yeah.
Does this get worse? Does it get better, or does they go for a blip for a while until it all corrects itself? Because if everything goes electronic, at some point you'd think there wouldn't be many investigations because they'll know everything, especially with online taxes, make taxes digital and all that. So at some point the government's moving towards a point where everything is visible.
Well, they're making it more difficult to get hold of money. They're making it easier to spend on a card, so they're getting rid of charges. So if you do a transaction charge, you've got to charge it for cash as well. So that it's definitely the way things are moving. I've heard people say, well, it'd be 10 years by now. Well, 10 years will probably be 5 years because things move faster. And in fact, 5 years might be 3 years that we're 60% digital. Look how fast contactless has come along, and online ordering, and Amazon, how fast that's grown. Things just rocket. And I do think that's the way it's going. So if you're heavily reliant on cash in your business, i.e. don't take cards, I think now's the time to switch over and start taking them.
I was told from someone quite high up at, wasn't HMRC, but someone that deals with the HMRC, but they said that they probably don't go after a lot of people that haven't got assets. If you've got assets, be careful. But they said where they're really focusing as a government is, the last government, which was a mess, but is modern slavery. Yeah. So lower wages. Yeah. You know, so I think that's probably where, and if they get you there, they'll probably get you on the next thing as well. But I think I had
an ex-member of staff who went for a trial at a fish and chip restaurant that's not long been open. It's not a member. It's nothing to.
Right. So even if it was, you can't do anything about it.
No. I don't think he's anything to do with fish and chips in the past, but it opened this, and she did a trial, and they said, "Oh, that's great," and she's in her 40s, and. Oh, that's great. You can start next week. It's £7 an hour cash in hand. And it's like, well, no. And that's what we're up against as an industry. And I think that's doing more damage to the industry than...
So would that fall under modern slavery, that bit? Probably wouldn't it?
It would, because it's under the minimum wage, which you're not allowed to do. But it also devalues everything that we're trying to do. Yeah. So people go in a fish and chip shop and see fish and chips as a product. They'll go in another fish and chip shop, fish and chips as a product. What goes into that portion of the fish and chips might be completely different. The costs associated, accreditation, training, equipment. Yeah. And those that are trying to do the right thing by investing in the business, investing in the staff, are undermined by the ones that probably aren't. And I think that's something that will right itself over a period of time. Yeah. But it's going to be painful. I know shops now that take 5 times what my shop takes and still struggle with the VAT. And it's because we're undermined all the time. And I think... the only way we'll probably get movement on VAT is if the industry cleans up a little bit, because it is cash.
Prove it a little bit.
Let's put money where the mouth is and say, look, we want to work with you. Bring the VAT down to a sensible level, and let's have a chat.
But it's chicken and egg, isn't it? Who goes first? And I think that's what it is. And we laugh about fish and chip shops, but it's everyone that does it. Anyone in a cash business, whether it's taxi drivers, or they're being they're moving over to cards as well. But you see, it's calves, burger vans, everything. And I think that it's easy just saying that chip shops do it. Go to a Chinese takeaway. How are you going to investigate them when they're not there before 5 o'clock anyway?
There's a new story this morning about Thomas Cook. There's somebody complaining because they can't get a refund because they paid cash for their holiday. And they said they've got to prove where the money came from. He said, well, I'm self-employed and I get paid in cash. Well, you should still be able to say where it came from.
Yeah, of course,
So, it is endemic. I don't think we're the worst. No. But I do think because we're feeling the pain now with commodity prices, and staff price, we're very labour intensive, equipment's expensive, fuel, waste is going to go up, and we're going to see more legislation on the waste side of things. It's going to squeeze us more.
Moving on to equipment, the next question, same person says, does the Federation help members with problems? Let's say equipment does not perform to the specification. So is that something you come up across a lot?
It is, but there's quite often... 2 sides to the story. I actually know who this was, and I know the history of it.
It was an online question,
As I say, I'll not go into specific cases, but if there's a problem, we'll step in, and you've got more of a voice when it's us speaking.
So I'm guessing though, with something like that, and I know the case as well, but if we talk broadly, if I was to buy, the biggest thing you'll buy in a fish and chip shop is a range. So let's use that as an example. If I was to buy a range, and it didn't do as it was meant to do within spec, well, you've got a 5-year, 7-year agreement, whatever it is that you've agreed on, whether it's 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever you personally agree on, that's your window of opportunity where you don't have to get anybody involved, surely, And the only piece that we get involved in between that would be training standards, I'm guessing, if it was that bad. But then maybe a quick phone call to someone like yourself and say, look, mate, come and have a look, I've done this and I've tried that. But these cases are pretty rare, I would say, aren't they?
They are. I mean, we did help this was helping an associate member actually with a guy up in Scotland who was having an issue with a range, and we drove up. I took David Miller up to try and help and mediate the issue, because sometimes there's 2 sides to the story, and it's misuse of the equipment or that causes a problem, but sometimes there is a fault. But the range manufacturers do want to get it right. They don't want constant problems. They want
to sell more, don't they?
Exactly. They don't want people going on social media complaining about it. So they do want to get it right, but I mean, obviously, something goes wrong with the range, it can be expensive, so it does hurt, and people talk about it.
I think one thing I've said in the past is that they're all quick to sell ranges, and I get that. And we're using range as an example here, so we're not pointing at range manufacturers. But it's everything. Everyone's quick to sell something, but no one talks about costs of servicing later on. And I think if everyone that was selling something large, whether it's peelers and actually what amazes me, moving off from, so if I just finish that point first, if I knew how much it was to service a range and how much the parts were going to cost for this year or next year, I think that would make me feel better knowing. But they'd probably have some some selling issues there, I'm guessing, because all ranges cost different amounts. But then one thing that surprises me is that people buy a peeler and a chipper and expect them to work forever without ever servicing them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and there is no service package there. Like, I've never seen anyone say, oh, well, I service peelers and chippers. And really, once a year, just to give it a look over, re-grease it or whatever, just to make sure it's all working.
Preventative,
yeah. Because you see, not many people own two of each. Yeah. So no one's going to have two peelers and two chippers. Some might, obviously. Yeah. But then even that one has been sitting in the garage for 4 years. You don't know if that one works. But it's just, I'm surprised nobody does that.
But we do complain as an industry about the cost of call-outs and repairs. But obviously I were in potato processing as well for a while.
That's expensive.
Well, when we had a bagging machine break down, the guy travelled up from Gloucester, and I think he was £400 an hour.
Yeah.
And he charged for the £400 an hour for the time we were travelling. So I should apply for his job.
So here's a question. How do you balance, and just to be clear, I'm an associate member, but how do you balance associate members with normal members? Where does the balance shift? Because if you've got more associate members, do you listen to them? If you've got more normal members, do you listen to them? How does it work?
As an organisation, we're there to represent independent fish and chip shops and the fish and chip industry and protect and promote their business. If there's an issue with an associate member, there's quite often, as I said before, two sides to the story. So we're not going to stand up for a member and say you're totally in the wrong to the associate member when we know they're not. We'll try and resolve the issue, and sometimes we can have a chat with the associate member and say, look, they've got an issue. It might not, we know it's probably not your fault, but let's see if we can do it. And we'll help the member as well and just try and intervene and stop the conflict. I think that's, if the associate member's in the wrong, then we'll go
I
at
think more so this question, I was thinking more along the lines of, if you get, let's say you get £100,000 a year from members, for argument's sake, and you get £150,000 a year from associate members, where does your loyalty lie?
With the members.
Yeah, well, and that's what the question is essentially. Yeah. And the answer is that. Yeah.
Without question, we're fish fries.
Yeah.
We represent ourselves. It's an open door. The organisation's open. I got involved probably 15 years ago. My dad probably slightly longer, probably about 17, 18 years ago. And we got involved to try and change it because at the time it probably wasn't working. And the organisation is there for us, and it's your organisation. So if somebody wants to get involved, just get involved.
Yeah.
We're one of the things we've done this year is workshops to try and get some messages out. We've had Mike Drummond flexing his muscles and his grey matter, talking about oil management as he likes to do. He does a great job for us. And it's just trying to get engagement. We're going to do one in the Southwest and try and get local meetings going so people can get involved. And if they want to get more involved, I'm dead accessible. They can get in touch or get in touch with somebody else who's on the NFFF board. And, it's an open door. And we're open to ideas. So if there's something that's worrying you, speak to us. We're there for you. So it's, and I think we've improved the way we do that. There used to be a lot of meetings all over the country. I think there were 26 in the Northwest, and then the area council, and that reported to the national board. I don't think we need that with technology, but we are more accessible. So if you've got an issue, talk to us, just sound it off us.
If this was on Facebook the other day, so you missed it actually. For the first time ever, I was texting someone saying, "Where's Andrew?" For the first time ever.
I had an early night. I went to bed early.
So a chap puts on Facebook, if all suppliers would add a percentage to their stock list, then shop owners wouldn't have to pay the membership fee. So it's the levy system. We've spoken about this in the past, and I put in my notes this old chestnut because I remember bringing it up years ago and getting told that we couldn't do it. Yeah. And that night I was not debating, but just informing this chap that people can legally opt out from the levy system, and I'm guessing that it would need to be an opt-in system because you can't just take money off people. And then I put, who would have the leverage in the relationship? Would it be the levy collector or the shop owner? Because all of a sudden, who are you? So what are your thoughts on the levy system? I know we can't do it legally.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the past we've talked about it for getting an advertising fund together, a promotional fund together. I don't know if it'd have to be on something that everybody uses. I
think his idea was on everything.
Yeah.
So whether it was batter, water bottles, anything that's let's say Colbeck's deliver something and there's 20 items on there, he's saying 0.5% on every 20 items. Well, to me, that actually sounds like you don't do a levy with the items, you do a levy with the wholesalers, and that makes sense, because then they just put 0.5% at the bottom of the invoice.
But then somebody else wouldn't do it.
But then somebody else wouldn't do it. And so the problem is it's an opt-out system.
I'll tell you what we're looking at for membership. I'd love to just, most of the meetings and we do, and I know there's probably a question later on about that, we represent everybody. So when I talk to the media, or when any of the board talk to the media, we represent the entire fish and chip industry, because it's important. Next year's celebrations, which I hope to talk about, that's for the entire industry. So we do represent everybody, and I'd love to have just everybody can be a member if they want, or opt out and cover it. But unfortunately, the NFFF does need money to function. We've got 5 people that work in the office above us now. 4 of them. One's finished for annual leave. So we need money to service the office. And to be honest, they're probably underpaid for what they do, but they just love the industry as well. They've got. We have to have the money to attend meetings, which will come on to how that's funny. So we have to have some revenue coming in. We've got some from training, we've got some from magazines, but we do represent the entire industry. And
if you don't mind me asking, how many people contribute? Like, how many people are members?
It's round about. It's actually increased in the last 18 months for the first time ever, in my time here, round about 10% of the industry.
So 10% of the industry, and it's a shocker, really, isn't it? Like that, £3.60 a week. Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah,
£3.60 a week. Starbucks coffee. Yeah, and I always go on about that because that's what I relate it to. You know,
that's where you spend most of your
time.
That's
where I spend most of my time, apparently. And you know, like £3.60 a week. And Jem basically said to him, "You'd pay less this way." Like, you'd actually, Jem Octem had not an argument, but basically laying out to this chap who said, well, I think you will do a great job, because he did say that, but he said he wasn't a member. Yeah. But Jem said for the sake of £3.60 a week, you'd pay less being a member than what you would if you did a levy system, because 0.5% on all your stock is probably going to be more than that, you know. So in that way.
Some people just don't want to be a member. Some people, I think there's a bit of the past.
I think, if I'm right, the whole thread's been deleted now, and I didn't screenshot it, because I wanted to use it for notes for this, but because he made some points, and I wanted to use them rather than paraphrasing. But he said, I'm not a member because others aren't. What benefit is there? And I thought, well, the benefits are the benefits you get for being a member. You don't need other people to be members for you also, you know, and in some ways with a membership system you're better off in an organisation where there's less members, because you end up being a bigger fish in that pond. So,
but I mean, I went to, as I said, the Bangladeshi Curry Awards, and one of the reasons I go is
you get a good curry.
Well, yeah, I actually got my hand burnt at one, but that's another. And they said something on the stage which I've always said: that's not what you can do for. That's not what the organisation can do for you, but that's what you can do for the organisation, and which is something I've said.
Do they struggle with membership then? I'd say, or at least this whole topic. Not that they struggle with membership itself, but this whole: how do you sell it to people? How do you get more people on board? Like, how do you appeal to their good nature? How do you do that? Like,
it's very difficult. It's something we've been working on for years. I mean, somebody used to say it's like selling the plague, because it's so difficult to sell. You know, people, they perceive they're getting the benefits without actually joining, but we're building more member benefits into what we're doing. I had a meeting with a credit card company, and they've offered preferential rates for the members. Obviously, the Just Eat tie-up that we've done recently. Everything we do, we try and build in more value for members, but really, people, it shouldn't be about what you're just getting out of it. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of work that really does benefit everybody, and for what it costs, it should be a no-brainer. If you're in France, you have to be part of your trade association, whereas here it's not low. But what we are looking at doing is introducing monthly payments, and I'm hoping to get that going at the beginning of next year. So it means it's not as big a chunk all at once, and it's direct debit coming out, and I think I know Neil Marshall from Doncaster. He suggested it, and it's something we want to do, but things don't happen overnight. We've got to build systems in place and put procedures in the office.
I mentioned that, and you said there was just a few issues to overcome if you was to ever do that. So I take it you've got past that.
Yeah, we've found a way of doing it, and it's just a matter of having the time to do it. But we're that busy at the moment dealing with all the different things that come in, and the more members we have would make that a lot easier, because we could do with an extra pair of hands in the office. There's so many things, and we took things on like the Quality Award, which Seafish ran, because it's the right thing to do for the industry and maintaining that standard. But it probably runs at a slight loss. You know, it's not a profit maker, but it takes a lot of time. Even training, the amount of phone calls you've got to make to get somebody on a training course, which, you know, and following up and trying to get hold of them, and you know, it all takes time and takes office time, and then there's paperwork and enrolling people. So things are a lot more time intensive, and the more members we've got, the easier we can do it, and also the more weight we've got in the meetings. We're definitely attending a lot more higher level meetings where media come straight to us. Everyone loves fish and chips, so I quite often I'll get somebody from Sky News phone direct, and you know, it's,
on a national level, it's good for sound bites. Everyone tunes in for fish and chips, don't they?
So everyone remembers fish and chips from their childhood, and it's just got that thing that nothing else has got, no other cuisine's got.
No,
it's up there with the Queen, London buses, black cabs, roast beef. It's iconic. So we're very lucky we've got that. Sometimes it's you don't feel lucky when everything's turned around on all the negative stories, so obesity, but it gives us the opportunity to put the right messages out, and that's what we try and do. And without the NFFF, there wouldn't be that focal point. Even, all right, there's the British Takeaway campaign now, which we're a part of, but they've not got the expertise in fish and chips to deal with issues in fish and chips.
I think one thing I've always said about the NFFF, and it's not your fault, nobody's fault, it's just the way, if you haven't got the members, like you say, you can't do this. But I'd like to see us get to a point where you're not putting out fires, but you're actually ahead of it all and promoting things. And I'd like to see that, but that takes time to get to. You can't just wake up in the morning and start saying things. You've got to, make sure all the other stuff's dealt with as well.
There's a lot happens, and you get things like fallouts between associate members, which we've got to step in. That we've had it on several occasions.
I've never been one of those. I'd just like to clarify.
No, you're usually passive, so it's like. But I mean, it just does take time. You've got phone calls to make, and you've got people to see, and then if I'm at an event, you're talking to people. So that takes time as well. I've kind of lost my thread there.
So moving on. So many aren't sure. Is the NFFF a commercial enterprise, a lobby group, or a charity? Could you clarify? And I've just been looking down my notes because that was not next, but it sort of ties in here.
It's kind of it's an unusual organisation. Its actual classification is a non-profit making mutual. So it's sort of a charity. It's run for the benefit of its members. But we have to, in today's day and age, you've got to be commercial. You've got to be. Obviously, we've got certain products we sell. Membership is one, but training and you've got to make a profit. You've got to make a profit on each bit to function. Some years, the last few years we've been reinvesting, so we've done up the premises just to make it more fit for purpose, and the training facilities and the lecture room we've spent money on, and made the reception area bigger, which there's no need for a big boardroom. We've only got a small board now, which again is streamlining the organisation. But we've got to make. We don't make a profit every year. We're investing in the future, so new IT systems, new website. We bought the domain nffff.co.uk. So the last few years we've probably made a loss, but we're reinvesting back and making us more relevant for the future. So we're more fit for purpose now, and I think we're having more of an impact in all the things we're working on. Not everything we do the industry hears about. There's things in the pipeline that we can't talk about that will happen in the next 12 months or 6 months. There's work we're doing. Obviously, we've got to keep something secret for our own commerciality.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But we're involved in a lot more things now, and it's all of that takes money, which we've got to be a bit more choosy on what we do, because you can't take another quality award on, because you need to make sure that there's money there to pay for another member of staff to handle something like that.
So this is, again, all NFFF stuff now for this part. Are the NFFF annual accounts available for members to inspect? And does the NFFF run at a profit, which obviously you try to, which is what you just said. So, for example, are EC expenses recorded? What's an EC?
Executive Council. So it's regional director now, so we've changed that.
I was going to say, it took me ages to remember regional director, so it's like...
Yeah, everything's available for members. We have an AGM, so anyone that's a member can attend. We're there to be scrutinised. It's not the case. I know in the past people have thought that you're on a gravy train. It's certainly not the case. It's an expensive thing to do, serve on the NFFF board. but everything we spend, you've got to get cheap travel. I'm not saying I don't travel first class. Sometimes I do, but I make sure it's cheap first class and my meals included.
You should sit on the floor like Corbyn.
Yeah, and then go and sit when the cameras are gone. Go and sit on there. But very rare. I mean, it's always the cheapest way you can travel on that day. So I'm down in London before the awards. I could have gone down on the Monday morning. I've got a meeting at 12 o'clock, but it's more expensive to travel on the Monday morning than to get a train down on the Sunday and get a hotel. So I've got a hotel, 58 quid. You know, we've got to look at, but that takes me away from
your job,
my shop. My shop's closed on a Sunday, but it's time I could be spending working on my shop. So there's an element to that. But
so as a paid up member, I would like to know, this isn't me, I'm paraphrasing for someone else. I would like to know, what does the NFFF do to make it harder for non-members to benefit from their efforts in promoting and protecting the industry? In my mind, that question there, so this is a member who clearly takes issue with the fact that you do represent all the other members, and I get that too. But there is a fine balance to strike here, you know, because you are representing all of them. However, how do you balance that?
It's very difficult to do so. I mean, obviously, I've mentioned that we're building more benefits in for members. We've got the members area on the website now. We've got collateral on there from there's things, templates and posters and things like that. So there's obviously the member benefits when we get deals with associate members, and so we're working on building more things in like that. I've got a few other things in the pipeline which I'm keeping close to my chest, but
fine.
It all takes time to do. And on top of trying to push that side of things, I've got to make sure the organisation runs day to day.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of my time, I must be on the phone 15, 20 times a day to the office while I'm working in the shop. So it's, and sometimes I've got a Bluetooth earpiece, and I think my customers think I'm talking to myself sometimes, but I can live with that. It's so difficult. Obviously, with the media, we've got to do what's right for the entire industry, and you can't say, but go to members' shop. But whenever we can, we do put mention the NFFF and say, look for an NFFF member or quality award holder. There's certain things that you can tag it into, but when you're talking to the media about, say, the story last year about the shop that closed down on the fish, you've just got to do the right thing for the industry and as a whole, and hope people appreciate the fact that you're sticking your neck out on the line. I did Sky News from my shop, which was about a potato shortage. I had this sign of my shop behind me, and I've got an earpiece on. They could ask me anything. If I say the wrong thing, it could be a Ratner moment. You could really damage your business. There's another story that's just about to come out about the difference between non-brewed condiments and malt vinegar. I was asked to take part in that, which I don't really want to, but I agreed to do. But I think they know I'd probably answer it too well, so it looks like they filmed it at somebody else's shop this week.
Who's debating that? Where's that coming from?
It's Food Unwrapped, I believe, from Channel 4. So,
I like watching that.
So,
but to be fair, that's an interesting topic. I know we may not like it because it shines light on a few things, but it's an interesting topic. I know you're sort of. I can see you're sort of like uncomfortable.
I've got both in my shop.
No. But I think that the fact is, one is acetic acid, and it was, and the history of it was just formulated because malt vinegar was going like mouldy or frothy.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's a quick thing to answer. It's not vinegar because it's non-brewed condiment. You know.
It needs a sexier name though, doesn't it? That's
of course it does. Someone needs to. NBC isn't exactly the nicest thing in the world. Just call it chippy acid or chippy vinegar. I don't know, but
you can't call it vinegar.
That's the point, and that's because there is food protections around the word vinegar, which is brewed. You know, so and I don't really care what others think. I like malt vinegar, and that's there. You know, it's my prerogative. I'm allowed that. You know, but I just think that. That is always going to come up, that one.
I think the angle they're coming from is that we're passing off a cheaper substitute for malt vinegar.
Which is cheaper than malt vinegar.
But we're not passing it off because, to be honest, I wouldn't even factor it into my budget.
No, but it's unintentional. And that's the point. It is, and it does whip up a story. I don't know how we got onto this, but while we're on it, we'll deal with it. But it is unintentionally passing off to some degree because, years ago when people, moved off from malt vinegar, which was costing more, and going frothy and in the bin, did they lower their price by a penny? No. So you can see how, some people would see that.
Talk about staff retention. I've got one member of staff that can't be near malt vinegar, so it's good because if I put it on my chips, you won't pinch them. But if I started using it, I'd probably lose another member of staff. So if I used it full time.
So if dark kitchens... blimey. So
winter.
Yeah. If dark kitchens and virtual kitchens proliferate through the country with cheap business rates and working with big delivery companies, how does Andrew think the fish and chip shops today will have to adopt to survive?
It seems to be the way things are going. It's a very worrying trend. It's because obviously they can operate a lot cheaper. They're talking about super hubs as well, where we've got all the cuisines under one roof. It's very difficult. So our overheads are higher because we've got maybe not high street, but we've got a location. But I think the industry is definitely going delivery.
Do you see the government taxing them more? Well, I see that rates, especially, they're unfairly distributed, as we know. And if you was to classify these aggregators and these super hubs or dark kitchens as essentially food bulk wholesale, because is what they do, then I could see them paying more rates, surely, at some point.
But the costs will still be lower because they don't have to have a pretty shop front. They don't have to have signage. So the setup costs are lower. But they need vehicles. They need vehicles, but we will as well because
so we'll have both. That's the headache.
So I think they'll always be able to operate, and also the value of the property will be cheaper. If you get an industrial unit, rent an industrial unit. They might have to spend a bit of money getting a bigger bore gas supply, but they can operate from more or less anywhere. But I do think as an industry we need to start moving towards deliveries. And I was very sceptical when I got involved with the British Takeaway campaign, so I thought Just Eat were just going to use it to get people on the platform. But actually, I can see the benefits of doing it. I'm talking to shops that have gone onto it. As long as you charge the right money and we're different to every other cuisine. We've got the footfall on a Friday. If I suddenly went onto delivery and sold things at the same price, everybody would be ordering from home.
The problem is, though, this chap sent me a screenshot the other day, and he's by no means alone here. And this shop was probably in your county. And I say county because I don't remember where, but it's definitely Lancashire. And literally, it was being sold for next to nothing. And the problem is, when you've got operators now that do this, but when you then put it on a screen, quality goes out the window. Yeah, it is literally, it's like, go compare who's the cheapest. Yeah. Customer don't care if he's paying VAT. Customer don't care if he's doing this, that, or the other. But this price, I can't remember what it was. It was basically like 15, 16 quid's worth of food. It was going out for like 8 quid. By the time he took off his Just Eat costs, by the time he took off his driver costs, by the time he took off his VAT, he was making nothing. Whether he knows or not, I don't know. But the fact is, this guy was saying, how do you stop that? Well, the problem is, I don't think you can stop it, because you can't stop it now, and it exists.
Well, it goes on with existing shops. What you've got to do is pass the story on to your consumer. So it's all about what you do in your shop to get that message across.
But if we look at Just Eat specifically, you can't, because how do you pass that story on? Because you've got to pay to be a sponsored, whatever. They hold the keys. They hold the keys to your success in some ways. I've known people that have come off Just Eat, and within a few weeks, Just Eat are ringing all the other fish and chip shops in the area saying, hey, this guy was doing X amount a month. You should be on this, And to be fair, they do that before they leave as well, because they want all the shops in the area to be on it. And so the next part of this person's question, your relationship with the aggregator is clever move to promote the new subscriptions at the NFFF. So congratulations. But do the likes of Just Eat have the future of the industry at its purpose? So again, these two questions have sort of just moulded there. And it's right, they don't care about the fish and chip industry. They don't care about the Indian food industry. They don't care, because it's not their business model to care. At
the end of the day, they are a commercial entity, and they've got competition, and they're trying to snap up as many outlets as they can before the others take those outlets. They're not totally ruthless. Some of it is probably been created by media stories, but they're spending a lot of money improving standards on the people on their platform. So they're not totally ruthless. I know one of our board members is a consultant anyway, but he's not an operating fish and chip shop. So he's doing a lot of work on that. They are investing in the British Takeaway, but again, that gives them a competitive edge. Yeah. So it does work. But talking to the secretariat from BTC, I don't think it'd be ruled out that other aggregators go on there, so they can get more. So they're not totally keeping it for themselves, but they are doing the right things to try and promote the business, protect the business, and raise standards. But it does need watching. At the end of the day, we need to get into deliveries, but
many people use an aggregator and then convert people onto their own system. So that maybe that's.
So this chap also said, why haven't the NFFF, or maybe you have considered it, why haven't you considered doing like a deal with an independent as well, like to help people get on to do their own independent system, like, and maybe you've got this sorted, because you might do, because I know you're quite technical, you think of these things, but I think this chap's real issue, and I get it, is saying essentially aggregators want volume, but they don't offer no exclusivity. That's because they want volume, and they require extra fees to gain exposure. They also do discounts on packaging, which means the shop brand slowly is eroded, and the people assume Just Eat delivered the food. In order to gain exposure, many people just go lower on the price. And I think that, I'm not being funny, right? They didn't make people use that packaging, but if they do, they cannot complain when somebody forgets the name of John's Chippy, Fred's Chippy, Bob's Chippy, and Just Eat delivered my food. Because that's their own fault. They should have thought about that. But I really think he makes a good point where he's saying maybe Andrew could look at independent ways of tying it in through the NFFF with the protections that the NFFF offer. And I think that's an interesting point.
It is, yeah. I mean, we've talked to quite a few people, so. As I say, just watch this space. That's probably as much as I can say on that.
No, it's fine. But I think I can see why people have reservations though about the Just Eat, because you see it all the time. Well, someone said to me the other day, you know how they call us partners? He goes, it's bloody true. They are like my partner. He goes, I feel like I'm giving someone a share of my business, and I feel that if that's the way it is now, while they've got competition, well, fast forward 5 years. If they've got no competition, then what? Yeah,
there's a lot of changes going on with Just Eat at the moment as well. As I say, I totally agree that you've got to protect your brand, and I have raised this with directors at Just Eat and said, as far as they say at the moment, that's not their intention, but you don't know if that'll change in the future. But delivery is definitely the way things need to go. So we need to find
as a model, I can see that as being the future. But it's just choosing the right path there.
It is, but you've got to remember, people say, I know one was launched recently and they're trying to charge 10% as an independent, which is probably too high. All right, Just Eat at 14%, but they're spending millions on advertising. They are a marketing machine. They do drive consumers to your business just as delivery will.
But at the same time, you're paying for it though, isn't it?
Oh, you are, yeah. Well, it's a
you're
service.
Paying for it in your fees, So, and again, they're just trying to funnel all of that customer base through them. But let's say if you used to use someone like, for argument's sake, the one that I've saw recently on Facebook, and then there's another one that I've spoke to. So you've got Prio Day, number one, who put everything on your page. It's you.
Yeah.
No one knows anything about them. And then you've got another one I've seen recently. I don't know the guy. I know nothing about him, but I've seen him on Facebook. It's You Just Cook.
Yeah.
And again, it seems to be a very similar model that you pay him a monthly fee, I'm guessing, to use the platform, and off you go. And that means that, you know what? If you don't mop up all of those customers that they're promising you, which they're not, they're promising it to everybody that's on the platform. They're coming to you. All of those efforts come to you.
But what I'd say is be smart. You've got this. You're paying for, just as you
I'd
say.
say that's everybody. To
you're paying for the services you said for the marketing out of your fees. Then if you can try, and I've said this to Just Eat, I say you're not worried about people converting people onto their own apps. And they said no.
No, they say that, but they do loads of tricky stuff as well. Loads of tricky stuff.
Well, you're going to try and protect your business.
But I know. But at the same time, like, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, he rings me up one day. He goes, "Oh, you're not going to believe it." I says, "What?" He goes, "Just Eat have just called me, and they're pretending it's not them." And I said, "Why? How do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, they ring up and they're like, 'Oh, what's your prices for delivery if I deliver off the website?'" He goes, "We don't do that. We only deliver through Just Eat." And they're like, "Oh yeah, but we've again like pressing him. We think that can we do it without Just Eat?" And he's like, "No." So he then does a 141, whatever you call it. Who remembers that? Because it was a landline, and then shows my age. And then it goes back to the Just Eat head office. So he then rings up his person and says, "Oh, do you know this number?" "Yeah, it's one of our head offices." "Well, I've just had a call." "Well, no, we wouldn't have done that. It's a scam." But they never asked me for anything. A scam usually means they want money. They didn't. And they do all these tricks. And I think there is an imbalance there. They're going to tell you one thing, like any company will. They're going to tell you one thing. It's not that they're personally deceiving you, but they have got their goal and their master plan, which every company has. I just feel that people need to use their brain a little bit when going into that. I think they are. And I think these questions show that people do have concerns about that.
And people that just go on it thinking all business is good and not looking at how much it's going to cost you with the commission. There's so many, and I think that's what the Indian cuisine and Chinese, they're in a race to the bottom. They might have a little bit more margin in some of their dishes, but they're all just trying to undercut each other and they're definitely heading for trouble.
Talking about all these transitions, the worst transition is that we've become a wholesale bulk food supplier, because you lose your brand, you lose everything, and then for me, that's what I'd be looking at. I'd be saying, who am I serving here? I just think it's going to be a problem.
I think we also need to preserve the theatre of a fish and chip shop. If you go to France, every morning they queue up and buy bread from a boulangerie because they don't buy it from the supermarket.
And that also means, I'm not being funny, that also means that people need to invest in their shops, because some shops are not nice places to go to. Maybe over the next few years, some things are going to come out of the wash, whether the leases and that, because there is some weird setups where someone's got a sublease of a lease and this, that, and the other, and that will help people invest. And if the government are serious about helping people, then we'll see some money free up there. But I think that if you want people to come through your door, have nice lighting, have nice decor.
You have to look at the big boys. I've always said that, and they make places inviting. It helps with staff retention as well if it's a nice place to work.
Up the chippy.
And I do think as an industry we've caught up some ground. We've got a lot more respect.
Definitely.
There's all sorts of shops out there that are pushing the boundaries.
It's funny. The Chinese takeaways don't employ anybody other than family or like people at the back that we never see. It was true, innit? With a new government and a solid majority, do you see a plan to revise the VAT system? And there is a sub-question. What's the NFFF's official stance on VAT threshold registration? I was going to get you there.
There's a banana skin.
Lower or higher. So, or just clarify that statement.
Well, first, I'll go on. Remind me of that second bit again. I'm sure you will, but I'll do the first bit. We hope so. A lot of what we're doing at the moment, I've been to British Takeaway campaign. I said, look, we need movement on VAT because it doesn't work, but now's just not the right time. Brexit, there's too much up in the air. I think post-Brexit, there is an argument that as big employers, and around that table we've got representatives that represent 85,000 different businesses. There's a lot of weight there. I know NCAS are interested in VAT. I know the Bangladeshis are. I've spoken to Ibrahim, who runs the Kebab Awards, Curry Life magazine, who have contacted with a lot of Indian restaurants. So there's an appetite there to try and get government to talk to us about a sensible way forward of how we can make it easier for businesses to grow and employ people, because at the moment we're just kind of stagnating. It's I know in my own business it's always that VAT element that's the bit missing that stops me expanding further. Which when I had 3 shops, you end up working just for the taxman and cover the wages, and it's there's no room to grow. And I think any government really needs to look at where we're heading. And we used to be a nation of shopkeepers, and if we're not careful, we'll all work for Amazon, or delivering Amazon stuff. We need to keep that variety culturally. You need all these different businesses. It's part of our national culture, and we need support. And there's got to be a better system than what we've got now. Yeah. When it comes to threshold, I know there was discussion. I mean, Craig Buckley did an excellent job on BBC News and Radio 5 Live talking to the Prime Minister. And I was pleased to see him interrupt him and get him back on track as well, which was fantastic. But there was the talk about lowering the threshold, and then we got a few messages from people that are trading below the VAT threshold in fish and chip shops. Now, we understand that it won't be to everyone's liking, but I do think the threshold needs to be looked at. I think it's becoming more and more difficult for anyone to trade underneath the VAT threshold.
Especially with costs the way they are.
With costs the way they are, unless they're not selling that many fish, it's going to be very difficult, and suppressing their hours and whatever else it goes on. But we've got to ask ourselves, is that the future of fish and chips? And it's not. The future of fish and chips are the shops open 6-7 days a week that are pushing to grow the business, to develop the staff. And so, although some of our members are probably not VAT registered, I think it's not the area of focus for the organisation. We have to look after the entire fish and chip industry, and sometimes you've got to make decisions that don't suit everybody. And I do think that the threshold needs looking at and needs lowering. And I think we need then there will be more people. I'm not saying lower it completely because you've got cottage industries, but
I think with the way technology is going, and I've had this discussion with Mark Drummond many times, and I've been wrong every time.
Well, you always are when you're talking to
exactly. But he says, well, you can't lower it too much because of the cottage industries.
Yeah.
I just think no. I just think with the way with the cashless society and cryptocurrency and all of this blockchain, I just can't see a reason why there isn't a way to automatically say, well, you're under this. Your company's this small or whatever, or you're a new company. Yes, you have to pay VAT from day one, and it's this much, and it works itself out because you can use online systems now.
I think it's more the negative publicity they get from somebody earning a bit of money, because again, that's part of our culture where people have
we don't like
done a bit of knitting and on it. But there's another element that's coming out there. There's quite a few artisan food places on market stalls at lower overheads that start delivering from there. You find that there's people doing it from the house. I saw an advert. It was just somebody posted on Facebook. Whether it's legally run, whether they've got a food safety,
probably haven't.
But it wasn't just a post. It was a flyer that had been done. Fakeaways, just Friday and Saturday night. You've got to order the day before and pick them up for a £5, and it's that. So again, that's a threat to responsible businesses, and that probably needs tightening up on. So again, there may be room for the threshold to be.
I just think it's a no-brainer that. But I actually think what you need to be telling these people at some point that you sit around the table with is that you need to change the strategy and actually flip it on its head. Stop waiting for the government to think about it. Start telling the government what we think about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, because they need telling. They don't understand. My local MP doesn't know. Boris Johnson didn't know. He listened. He did listen. Credit where credit's due. Craig sent me that video again yesterday because I've been sending it to some other people.
Yeah.
And he listened.
Yeah.
He did not know the intricacies. I guarantee you, if Boris Johnson doesn't, who, believe it or not, is quite an intelligent person, if he doesn't, other people don't know. Because, my local MP doesn't know. And it's our job as well as local independents of small businesses. I'm a small business. We tell our MPs, and I think we need to flip it on its head, especially now.
That's what we're starting to do. We're starting to push. I mean, we're getting that kind of conversation going, but with Brexit, it's just not the time. And I think post-Brexit, it's the time to go to them and say, look, we want this looking at. We want to work with you.
I think we need to be educating them before, though, especially local MPs, because it will filter up. If you can get 15 fish and chip shops in the Chorley area, like all around you, Buxton, all that, all then sending messages to your
probably about his speaker, so that.
But again, if we can then let's use a different tab. But if we can do that, all the fish and chip shops, all the kebab shops, all emailing or the local MP in that local area, that's one more person that is now informed.
Well, we're planning something at Parliament as well in probably second quarter. So that's another opportunity to talk to MPs about issues. And we're going to start, and then it needs coordinating. But it's something that needs tackling. And obviously, I pay VAT, I charge VAT and pass it on to the government, which is actually what you do. But in the end of the day, if it's not there, you're putting to yourself, and it's it's always the bit
how you get it.
Exactly. No, they don't wait.
No, this probably bolts onto the back of the pricing. If the pound does better, prices will come down a little bit, you'd hope, wouldn't they, on fish and everything?
You'd hope so, but there's no guarantees in anything. There are different markets out there. People have to, again, they're commercial entities, and they'll go for the best price. And if they're talking about fish, if they're producing headed and gutted,
it's going China.
And it's cheaper to produce. They get a higher value for it. Why aren't they doing it? But I went on the Norway trip with the top 10 this year. And Inga, who owned the vessel that went on the Granite, he was very much an Anglophile and very much pro fish and chips, because that's been his major source of income, and it's a huge trawler that they've got, and that's what they like to focus on. So they do recognise the value of the fish and chip industry, and it's a steady industry, it's a steady market.
I'm not being funny, but they recognise the monetary value. That's what they've recognised. Of course, they like fish and chips because they, I'm not being funny. Bobby Joyce said it in his podcast, and whether I've interpreted it differently, but I think that. Years ago there was a lot of boats, and now there's a lot less. They control the market. That's the whole point. There's less fragmentation. There's more support within themselves. They know exactly what they're doing.
We had this conversation about farms before we started as well.
There's
less farms. The cost of producing good quality potatoes means that you've got to have the expensive equipment. You've got to have the agronomy. You've got to have the storage. You've got to have the infrastructure, and it's more difficult for independents to do. I think
the frozen at sea industry, if we zone into the Norwegian side more, I think they've been very efficient of creating new markets.
Yeah.
And that makes complete sense. That's their business. We'd do the same. However, it's at the cost of this industry. And that's the truth. I sent you a link a few weeks ago, and it shows how, they are trying to sort of, Norwegian seafood especially, trying to get more people within the restaurant industry doing fish and chips and to be using Norwegian seafood, frozen at sea. Well, if there's more extra markets, which they're actively seeking, it's going to push the price up. And I don't think a lot of people would like to see. We know it happens, don't get me wrong. We know that Morrison's do fish and chips, pubs do fish and chips, everyone else does fish and chips. But then saying to other restaurants that still don't do fish and chips, do fish and chips, and use frozen at sea Norwegian fish, I think it's going to start to irk some people.
Well, I have to say, every time I go into London, every pub's got outside fish and chips. They don't have roast beef, it's fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
But it's advertising fish and chips.
Yeah, it does. No, it does.
But yeah, without the British fleet, we'd be snookered as well. And some of the best fish I've had recently was up in Peterhead, because some fantastic stuff up there.
Yeah.
But it's about supplying me down in Lancashire or somebody down.
I agree. Yeah.
There's got to be a balance.
Yeah.
I think the Norwegians are very efficient at what they do, and they're very good at marketing. Like Norway.
Yeah.
I went to something recently which is Blue Opportunities, which I was invited by the Norwegians, and I have to say they're very forward thinking, and they're investing in green technologies and more so than and making those open to the rest of the world.
Yeah,
they're very, very clever people, and they're just good at
no doubt.
Good at business.
I'm not questioning them.
But we have to remember that we need to make a profit as well, and it's it. So, like we were saying before, if cod and haddock's expensive, then people will look for alternatives, and consumers will buy it. I know shops that are selling pollock very successfully, but they're still doing cod and haddock, or whichever one they do in the shop. There's a balance there to be had, but it's very difficult for us to control the market. We can just highlight what may happen if people are struggling to pay for fish.
That makes sense. So climate change is a big issue for us all. Cutting carbon emissions has become a major focus. Local authorities are really picking up on it. Has anyone approached the government? I'm guessing no, because of what's been going on at the government. Well, let's carry on with the question. But has anyone approached the government to discuss the levels of emissions from non-energy efficient frying ranges and suggest a reduction in carbon emissions if all the equipment had to be certified by a UK government body? So essentially, gas blowing out ranges. Yeah.
Well, I get that. And the more efficient, it's a bit like the MOT getting the old cars that are polluting off the road. I've actually got a meeting tomorrow with a company that uses artificial intelligence to make businesses more efficient with energy. So it's certainly on our radar. With frying ranges, nobody's been in touch with the government. It's not really for us to blow the whistle on it. It's for them to say, as an industry, you need to reduce it. If they start taxing, this is how the governments work, they'll tax you on it. So then people switch on to the fact that you need to start looking at it. So what's going to happen with waste? We're going to higher waste bills so that we reduce our food waste.
Have like emission claims ever been, like, you've been tested them? When I don't know, like there seems to be two camps naturally in our industry anyway. You've got Dutch and British ranges. There's nothing in between. Have you ever tested anyone's claims when they said X amount efficient? Have you ever had them scrutinised? Because you use it from all sorts of people now. Oh, this is really efficient. I remember years ago, when we had a P&T years ago, Preston Thomas, for those that don't know, I remember touching the exit pipe, the flue, the gas pipe, and wow, it was hot. Yeah. Now you touch one of the modern ones, nothing. So you can tell already that in a basic form, more efficient. Because it's not heating up the roof. Yeah. So, does anybody ever check this? If someone's saying we're 90% efficient, 50% efficient, or whatever it is they're claiming, does anybody check that?
It should come through, I imagine, CE plating. I'd have thought when the new technology's developed, I imagine that's where they've got to test it. I think in an individual basis that there's a bit of variation in ranges, even in performance.
I guess there is, like a car would.
Yeah, I've used chips on the same brand of range in the same day, the same chips. On 3 different ranges, and they're all slightly longer to cook because of different settings inside the range, and how the Friers like theirs set as well. I know people are buying. I just want that tweak and get the engineer back to. But it's something for the future that's definitely going to become more prevalent. I think people need to look at how environmentally responsibly they operate, and that will save their money and make them keep their profits in the future, because there's definitely going to be more legislation. I've got a meeting, I think tomorrow morning, with a guy who does fat soils and grease traps,
because that's going to be an issue. I had a meeting with Southern Water about 4 weeks ago, and they've got 4 people on prosecutions now who are all ex-policemen.
Wow.
But they'll go in softly first, but by your second and third, it's going to start costing you money. So you're going to have to
get rid of these fatbergs.
Yeah. So they'll track it back to you and they'll give you a warning and they'll sort it out the first time. The second time, it'll be a stricter one and maybe a bit of a fine. The third time, they'll take you to court. And that'll start coming into play more and more often. I know they're talking to other water companies as well and exchanging the skills. So we're probably going to all have to put equipment in place to handle it. A lot of new builds have to do it now, but I think existing shops will have to do it.
So a new shop now would probably have to put something
I think
like
so,
that.
yeah. I know.
Is it like a box they put on the main exit pipe, or is it at the sink area?
It's usually the sink. David Miller's got one in his.
Yeah, I've seen that, but I've always wondered at the sink area, though, like, it's not going to take the most amount. It'll take a bit out, obviously. Does that cover the people that maliciously throw oil down the drains? Because I guess that's where the majority is, surely. Those big fatbergs, no? Or...
No, I think there's a build-up. And I think
constant little streams.
Well, I think there probably are people that aren't disposing of them. I mean, there's a parade of shops where my shop is, and it's only the existing operators that have all got oil collection bins. So I don't know what previous owners of some of the shops did with their oil. And they might have put it in mine. And at least I'm getting paid for it. So, but no, I think this machine, they're around about £2,000. Hopefully, we might have a solution for that for members as well. So that's what my meeting is tomorrow. I think mandatory food waste collections are definitely coming. So, which is awkward for me.
So that'll be a separate bin?
That'll be a separate bin.
You put what, scraps in there or stuff like that we're talking, like waste products?
It'll be waste food, so like chips that are left over all go in there. That could be a problem for shops that don't have a lockable outside space, because if you get a drunk walking past and kicking it over, it could make a mess, but that's something I'm going to have to deal with as well. But that's definitely coming. I think the amount of waste, obviously the costs are going to go up. There's rumours of waste transfer notes and higher charges for it, like they do with bigger businesses. So there's all sorts of things. So the more efficiently you can operate and start thinking that way now, the better.
There's just so much legislation coming through that, and again, you can see why, because with this one especially, if every shop trickled out, I don't know, a glass full of oil a day, every food business, just imagine how that clogs up, the system. And we're lucky because we're a first world country and we have, a proper underground sewage system, and we're ruining it because a lot of people throw plastic down the drains as well, especially in toilets and stuff like that. You bundle that with all this oil as well, it's just
it just becomes a big clogged mass. So it's something that we need to do, and if we can find a solution for members that's not too expensive upfront cost, then that's got to be a positive. But everything you do, you start thinking about how you can operate more efficiently with LED lighting, because it will pay off in the future. Whereas if you don't start now, in 5 years' time, which might be 3 years' time, as we said before.
Yeah, because everything just
You might face a big bill all at once, so start working that way.
What do you think the future holds for food retail, hospitality industry? Who do you see as influential and who's leading the way?
As in specific companies?
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. That question came in, and I just...
I'd say rather than individual cuisines or companies, I think the trend's going to be... You're starting to see more and more of them coming up, certainly in London, but they're getting food halls. I think that's going to be the big thing for the next few years. People that don't want to sit in and get a takeaway and don't want to go for a full restaurant meal, or they're meeting up with friends and, it's like everyone's got dietary requirements now, and they just tick that box so people can go, you've got the atmosphere, you've got the choice of food, different operators, but you can all sit on the same table and consume the food. And I think... the CISA convention I went to, they were saying the same thing, that it's going to be, food halls are definitely going to grow. In cities, it's anything that's got a small footprint, because obviously the cost of land's so expensive.
The only downside with the food halls, I think, from an operator point of view, is that, and I've spoken to a few people about this because they've come to me and said, I'm thinking of doing a food hall, is that you don't actually own anything. And I think there needs to be some guidance there, because I think that they'll just say, well, you don't own anything, we'll set it up and we'll just take 20% of your revenue.
I think there's different structures.
Yeah, there is, but essentially you own nothing in all of those structures. In best case is that you pay for the range and you can take it with you when you leave. And that's a very specific fish and chip industry case. But I just think that there needs some guidance there.
Again, it's another risk. It could be another thing, such as the aggregates where they set up super hubs and that's going to be led by the consumer though, because that's what the consumers are requiring. They want a food hall. So that's
they say that, and I'm going to take it all with a pinch of salt. Because I don't want to say that. I don't want to go out all on and say they were wrong. But when you've got millions being pumped into marketing a message, they want us to believe that every single person is using Just Eat and every single person uses Deliveroo. They want us to believe that this is now the future. They want us to believe that no one goes to a normal Indian restaurant anymore or a Chinese restaurant. We all go to food halls. Well, we don't. I've never been to a food hall.
I agree with you. I've never.
And I think so. It's all right them saying it, but where did that message come from? It's from someone who's got investor money who now is trying to change the way we think. Oh, it's so modern to go and eat at a food hall. I hate food halls if it's the ones that I've been to in the past, which are like in a like a big shopping centre. If it's anything like that, please keep me away. I'll get there, and then what they're trying to do is fill it up with. So you've got an investor-backed food hall with lots of investor-backed street food things. So they try and make out it's all we're really cool and current, but it's all investor-backed.
Yeah.
So there's no real independent in there. So I think for me it's just where does the message come from, and actually, we've got to be careful because the traditional businesses in that sense are the ones with the most to lose. So I'd always be careful when these guys or companies or organisations are all saying this is the future, because they get paid to say that, and they want us to feel like we're boring and sad because we just go to the chip shop or go to a restaurant normally. That they want us to make us feel like we're old-fashioned. And I think that's a marketing ploy. I genuinely think that they want us to feel like that, so then we get all hip and then jump on Deliveroo or Just Eat and so on. But really what we should be saying is, still looking to the future, having lovely environments, of course, all of this, but fighting hard for that pound.
But you have to look at the next generation coming through, and the next generation are different.
You do, but you know what? I think that the next generation is still schooled by the current generation, and they're not going to become ignoramuses overnight. They're not. And yes, they will use Deliveroo and all that more. But you know what? The next generation is also going to have is a high cost of living. They can't get a bloody mortgage, right? So everything's going to have a way of washing itself out. So I think that we've just got to really be careful that we're not following this marketing ploys which are then sold to us as research. That's what I'd say. I feel quite strongly about it clearly because I've gone on for a little bit. So,
not like you.
No, it's not. No, but so what advice? And I think you've mostly touched on this anyway. But let's wrap it up with a bit of this. What advice can you give fish and chip shops? Your members, let's say, even your non-members.
Everybody.
Everybody really.
You've got, as we said, we've covered most of it. Make sure your premises is right. Invest in training. I don't just mean with us. There's KFE out there, or external training on customer service, or invest in your people. Because if your people aren't well trained, you're going to lose customers because the mistakes happen, and you still lose the odd one, but it just minimises that. And also, it helps with retention as well. You need to be thinking of the future. Don't just think of the environment we're in now, because the future will come quicker than we all expect it. So, as I said, make sure you're environmentally responsible, and sustainability for fish is a good way to start. But the sustainability, and have all the information there for your consumer that makes you different from the shop down the road. Show that you've got the education, show you've got the knowledge, and we can help you with all that. We'll put you in touch with the organisations, but also look at technologies, because it is coming, and it's. I've not signed up to an aggregator yet, but I will probably be signing up for the new year.
Is this for collection only or delivery?
I do click and collect now with the system, because I've got technical skills, so I put one on. And that last night it was getting to the point where it was annoying me. So now we're getting that many coming through, and but it's great, it's business. But we were busy in the shop as well with it being Christmas, so. I'd probably need more staff when I go onto an aggregator. But if I don't do it, somebody else will, and somebody will come into my area that's doing it. So you've just to fend them off, and I'll make sure I charge right for it. And if people want to use it, then they use that facility. I'm not going to do it cheap. So I've got to protect my margins. But it's a service that you're willing to offer. But there's so many people out there that have got say 3 kids, that every time they nip out, they've got to bundle 3 kids in a car, or one of the kids has to go to bed at 7 o'clock, so they're too busy before that to eat. After that,
and I'm not sold on the argument that people are lazy.
Yeah.
Like they're just busy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like. And maybe sometimes someone does want to just sit and watch the Xbox, or play the Xbox and order something. I get that, but I think that is the strongest case. What you just said is that people have 2 or 3 kids. We need to get food. We didn't go shopping or whatever. Blah blah blah. Let's just order.
Or we don't know how to cook.
Yeah, we don't know how to cook. And obviously, the fact that nobody learns it at school means that that's a high chance.
I picked up an order over the last few weeks. Somebody used to come in infrequently, but he's coming in all the time because his wife orders online. But he's not good with money, so she doesn't trust him with money. So she pays online, and he comes and picks the order up. There's so many different cases where people want to. I do it myself. I have to say, on a Sunday night, if I can't be bothered going out, it's just an easy way of doing it. So I'd definitely say
there should be no shame in it. Like,
No.
I think like the way you just sort of said, well, I don't know, that's fine. Like, I'm not trying to shame it. I'm just saying, like when I said earlier, it's just I don't think it's as prevalent. It's a growing market, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's like how people would make you believe.
Yeah.
Like, the world hasn't changed. It's very similar to like the talk about the election the other day. If you follow Twitter, you think you'd wake up the next day and everything would be on fire. You know what? I was in London the next day. I don't think anybody would like look miserable any more so than being in London. Like, but, you know what I mean? Like everyone just carried on, and it's like, and I think it's the same with this. It's like we hear a lot about everything. When you see an article that says, just eat this and deliver that. I always think, where did that article come from? Like, and it's funny because the negative ones never really take as much steam, but yet the paid ones,
But then look at Christmas shopping and how the internet's transformed that. Being a takeaway operator, we used to be busy all Christmas, people doing toy shopping, present shopping, and that's stopped now. And you really only get the week and a bit before Christmas where people are getting food shopping. 5 years' time, that might be going all delivery. I actually don't think shopping like grocery delivery works brilliantly because you've got to be in and nobody wants it. I don't use it myself anyway, but things can change very quickly, and we've just got to keep an eye on these technologies. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it's definitely something to watch. And I think the more... My first order on Click and Collect was a 76-year-old guy. I hadn't even launched it. I just put it on my website, and he was looking for me opening time, so I can order. And I wasn't ready for it.
I'd use that all day long. The fact that, because that's for me, it's the benefit of most worlds there. Like, so you can order it, pay it, go collect it, and then you can still see people that you want to see.
Yeah.
I've said in the past that I don't like talking to people in the supermarket because I feel like they're forced to talk to you. It's not the same thing. Chip shop, we don't really force people to talk to people. It's gradual. It's just, how are you doing, mate? You're right. So it feels nice. Like same as going to the butchers. You feel like you're part of something. So Click and Collect for me, no issue whatsoever. Delivery, no issue if it works. I think it's just the delivery bit. People just need to consider how they do it. Like that's all. And I'm not being just hard on Just Eat and all them lot. All of them. If the other guys that I mentioned decide to get all cheeky and start increasing prices, then. But for me, you want to create as much choice as possible.
Yeah.
Because if anybody in that system has a monopoly, you're stuffed. I mean,
with everything.
You
need, like we're saying, you need the British fleet to offset the frozen at sea, and you need that choice. You've got to have other options. If there was only one range manufacturer, there's be 3 times the price.
Probably half as good. They wouldn't care.
Competition's good for people, and
exactly.
you need that competition for a thriving market. I think when it's saturated, that's when there's an issue, and that's some of what's going on now with cuisine. I think that we'll see even fish and chip shops. There used to be 35,000 and there'd be one on every street and people just walk to it. Now people will drive to one of the 10,000. In a few years, and I know we've had this conversation before, it could be 6,000. There's consolidation going on across the board, and that's unlikely to stop, especially with all the legislation. It makes it more difficult for an owner-operator, unless he's taking a high turnover, he's got staff in his shop, or he can pay somebody to manage all the paperwork that's coming and is already in existence. So it's definitely changing the way the industry functions, and your role as an owner will become less hands-on, I think, and you're more making sure you satisfy all the legislation.
A lot of admin.
Yeah, there's a lot to watch, isn't it? That's the thing, and it's when you take your eye off the ball that you get stung.
It's true. Like anything. Yeah. But Andrew, that's everything, mate.
Great.
We've done loads, and you've got loads of meetings today. and I've got to go drink coffee apparently. Yeah, so,
I'm looking forward to a brew now, actually.
But I just want to say, thanks for this. I think this shows as well, this shows how open you're all being now. You're happy to sit down and go for a load of questions, and just shows how times have changed. And I think that's really good. I think, and members and non-members will listen to this, and people outside the industry might be listening to this, and just see how much you are pushing the envelope forward.
Well, the thing is, we're all fish fryers, we're all business people, and we love what we do, and it's just about trying to improve the industry while we've got the opportunity. And in a few years' time, it's somebody else sat in this chair, and hopefully they'll be doing the same things, and maybe things slightly different.
Someone said that now that you mentioned that, and I did have it in there, but I think I took it out. I'm not sure. But someone said, "Will we see a female president one day?" Because behind you, I see lots of male presidents, and I think now we're probably the closest we've ever been to one day having a female president.
Well, there's a few on the board that are looking very good, and looking very keen to run the organisation. So I want an exit strategy at some point, but I think certainly will. I think certainly will. I think everybody with a fish and chip shop, I grew up with my mum and dad. The shop wouldn't have functioned without my mum there. And I know there's the women in fish and chips. I think women do run fish and chips, to be honest, to a certain extent, and it's definitely got to happen. It's definitely got to happen.
Yeah. Well, look, again, it's merit based. They've worked hard. They've got good ideas, just like everybody else, if not better ideas than men.
Yeah. And they've got a way of getting the way. They get their own way out here. Yeah.
So mate, on that note, thank you very much. And we're going to end it here. And have a great Christmas.
And you.